Good evening, America. I'm Jason, and you are watching Jason Goes Political. For the sake of continuity, this evening we'll be together for about an hour or so. And for the sake of continuity, All financial gifts that are $19 or under, I will read toward the end of our time together. And everything above 19, I will interrupt the stream as soon as I see them. But we have Entropy up as normal, Cash App, and Odyssey all running as well. Great to see you all. I was going to be in a brand new studio today for Jason Goes Political, and OBS decided to do what OBS likes to do, which is to malfunction at the most inopportune time. So it has malfunctioned, and we are not in that office, but we will have a new space to stream from in the future for Jason Goes Political. So the first thing I want to do is, this is going to be kind of a laid back stream. We're going to take a look at some news and talk about some politics, and I want to get your views and questions and comments and thoughts and suggestions for how to address the political problems here in the United States. And whether you're a citizen of the United States or not doesn't matter. But it's great to see so many friends with us as normal. There's Masumi Rabbit saying hello. Great to see you, brother. And essentially what Jason Goes Political is just, I made a decision that I wanted to have at least a 10 episode run, just to see what folks think about it. If it brings any new people into our community, that would be great. I'll be reading strictly political news that's relevant to the United States, and talking about my own political positions and the kinds of things that I would do if I were in office to remedy the problems that we have in the United States, particularly with all of these anti-whites who call themselves leftists and woke and SJWs and all of this sort of business. And there are a lot of wild political things going on to discuss. So I thought this would be great, sort of an exploratory opportunity to investigate how many people are interested in hearing from me on political matters and hearing about the sort of steps that I would take if I were in office to remedy things. So about a 10 episode, if there's interest in it, then we could go longer than 10 episodes. And if not really a lot of interest, then we'll just wrap it up at 10 episodes, and it will have been something fun, hopefully entertaining over the course of those episodes. Probably will be every Tuesday evening, and probably Tuesday evenings at maybe 7 p.m. Eastern Time, maybe 8 p.m. Eastern Time. I want feedback from you all, and that's really what these 10 episodes are all about, is filling out what this type of a show could be like, what would be entertaining, what would be informative, what would be empowering. Could this be something that you could use to bring your friends around to some ideas that perhaps they haven't heard before? And of course, I'll be using the lexicon while discussing politics. And as we approach the midterms, you're likely to get into more conversations about politics with your friends, family, and strangers. And so this is just going to be another way to help empower you, but certainly another opportunity as well to address many of the things going on in the country, and perhaps popularize to some degree the sort of strategies or positions that I would take if I were in office. So do let me know, and what you all think and any ideas you might have. Should be every Tuesday at around, like I say, 7 or 8 p.m., but maybe initially, maybe every other Tuesday, or during these 10 episodes, it might be every Tuesday or every other Tuesday. But we'll see. We'll see how the time goes, and if I can make it happen, then I will be making it happen, in addition to my many other commitments. But yeah, we were ready to roll with a lot of work invested in a brand new studio, and it's awesome. It's totally awesome. And then all of a sudden, I was looking at the screen. Everything was fine. We were getting ready to roll, and maybe not seconds, maybe like a minute and a half before I was going to go live, I had just looked at the screen. Everything was looking good. I looked back. I had done nothing. I looked back, and all of a sudden, it was bizarre looking. So, and I couldn't find a way to remedy it, and I didn't want to make you all have to wait any longer. And so One of the other things I would like to ask and get you all thinking about is if this show's going to have, if it's going to survive beyond 10 episodes, what kind of logo might we have? You know, something that would go up in the corner of the screen. Right now there is none. And would there be any sort of bumpers? And one second. Would there be any sort of bumpers, or would there be between maybe at the beginning and the end of the show? I don't know that there would need to be one in the middle of the show. I'm thinking, as far as length goes, an hour to 2 hours, but not longer than that, so that it's really accessible to folks when they see the thumbnail. Great to see Elaine. I have your box that you mailed, and I haven't had an opportunity to open it yet because I've been quite busy. There's Corbin is with us. Question Everything is here. Archangel, great to see you. There's Franklin, and there's the great Dude Bro Moment. Great to see you, brother. There's Glenn. There is Kate. How are you, young lady? And the great Yiz is with us as well. How are you feeling, Yiz? Are you any better? John Doe is also here. I know Fornull is. Great to see you, good brother. He was here first. Mock is here. Montana Kid, great to see you. Azimuth Clark. All right. I'm going to go ahead then, and after putting those thoughts into your head, now please do this. If you have a great idea, those thoughts and questions, if you have a great idea, or you want to say, yeah, I like the 7 o'clock idea, I like the 8 o'clock idea, or I like whatever, or don't like, put it in the thread once the video has posted. I mean, I think technically you could put it in the thread while it's live as well, rather than just in the live stream. Because if you put it in your great idea in the live stream, I have to see it somewhere in the live stream. And I rarely am able to watch all the way through my live streams after the fact. So let's get into, there's a lot of news right now. I mean, I know right now there is in Arizona, there is a hearing, and they are meeting with a group, I think, called True the Vote, and they have been investigating, and they've been investigating what they refer to as election irregularities with voting, and they are showing the government there in Arizona, demonstrating the power of state-level legislators. They're showing them evidence that they believe proves, because it's their belief, not mine, that they believe proves that there were fraudulent ballots cast. And there is a possibility, depending upon, without knowing the players in the politics in Arizona, I can say generally that there's a possibility that the Electoral College votes could conceivably be taken away from any particular election that they have concluded was in some way tampered with. So that's interesting, because there is the possibility that there could be a domino effect. This Truth the Vote are working in multiple states. I haven't followed them at all. I've heard of them, but I worked on the Hill, and maybe I should start off saying that for anybody who's watching, at least in replay. I worked on the Hill in the Nerve Center for the Conservative Movement during Bush Jr.'s first term. And I came face to face with many politicians, and worked in various operations to secure their positions, to get people elected. We worked on judges and getting them appointed. We had a Wednesday lunch. I talk about this in my book, Born Guilty, and you should pick up that book. You can at Amazon, of course, and at nowhiteguiltcollectibles.com. If you get it from there, you'll get a signed copy. I talk a little bit about these Wednesday lunches that we had, which were off the record. So you had Senate and House members would come over for these luncheons. The leaders of the biggest conservative organizations in the country would attend. White House representatives, staff would attend. And everything was off the record, so they would talk frankly about, and this was a big big luncheon. They would talk frankly about strategy, about what could or couldn't be done, and I got to see firsthand a lot of the problems in politics in general, but specifically in the United States, and became pretty jaded by it. Decided to leave the Hill and continue with my life and continue with the work that I've been doing for Western Kind before, during, and after my time there on the Hill. And so I pay less attention to the day-to-day political news, if you will, because I know how meaningless much of it is, or most of it is. There are moments and of decision, and there are individuals who have the power to make decisions, and those things rarely intersect with the intrigues and the conversations that are put before us. And there's no real way to peek behind the curtain, if you will. But there certainly are strategies and approaches that we can talk about that could remedy and that are very much off the map, some of them, of the kinds of things that have been done in the past. Clearly, what we need in the American political sphere is vigorously aggressive political actors and policies. We can't have this mealy-mouthed, genteel approach when it comes to anti-white liberals, anti-white Democrats, anti-white Marxists. We can't expect them to deal fairly with us by dealing fairly with them. They play by the rule of the jungle, and we've been playing by these Queensberry rules. And there needs to be an end to that. I made that argument many times when I was on the Hill. I was not in office. You need to be, though, as a politician, in your aggressiveness, in your fortitude, in your intolerance of the ideas advanced by Democrats and leftists of various stripes. You need not only to be aggressive there and intolerant, but you also have to be classy when you do it. You also have to be honorable when you do it. You also have to be a statesman when you do it. You can't be a crank. And so the only kind of people that we see who are standing up against a lot of these what are called leftist policies, anti-white policies, are cranks, and they say crankish things. And they're actually serving these anti-white leftists by doing so and by being the kind of people that they are. And so there needs to be powerful and very intelligent ideas need to be injected. And part of that is comportment and how these things are carried out. So let me jump over to the Biden. What's going on in the Biden administration? Hello to everybody on Odyssey and D Live. Amid a rolling series of calamities and sinking approval ratings, the president's feeling lately is that he just can't catch a break, and that angst is rippling through his party. Washington, faced with a worsening political predicament, President Joe Biden, senile in chief, is pressing aides for a more compelling message and a sharper strategy. Well, who's he kidding? Who is this author kidding? He's not pressing anybody. Come on, he's just asking where his applesauce is. He's pressing aides for a more compelling message and sharper strategy while bristling at how they've tried to stifle the plain-speaking persona that has long been one of his most potent assets. I think that persona is gone. It was eaten away with whatever's going through his head. And so this is a pass the buck scenario. Just like Kamala Harris is passing the buck. It made me think, this speech she gave the other day, where it sounded unbelievably inane. like impossibly inane. And I reflected back on her debate with Pence and how she wasn't that inane. Somehow she put together sentences there when you would think that under pressure in a debate, not knowing, or supposedly, I guess, not knowing what your opponent is going to say, and Pence scored some mighty points against her. And I'm no fan of Pence. I'm just being fair. But somehow she was able to cobble together sentences. And now she gives a speech that's written for her, and she can add a couple of ideas here and there. And she ends up saying the word together like 8 times in a row. And it's just, so maybe she's now suddenly suffering from mad cow disease. I don't know what it is, but she supposedly has a history of being this dumb. And so it makes me wonder about that debate now. There are people, not yours truly. I believe everything is on the up and up at debates, totally legitimate. But there are people out there that make the claim that there can be devices inserted into the ear that are infinitely superior to like an earpiece or hearing aid, and totally invisible, way down in the ear canal, and that sentences and messages can be transmitted. Now, I don't know if that's true, but what I can tell you is true is that at one point, the CIA in America had to listen in on conversations in foreign embassies with bugs, what was referred to as bugs. They were little devices. They got smaller and smaller. And then, they kept getting found. The bugs kept getting found. So they kept placing the bugs, though, to keep foreign countries off the trail once they had developed a new technology that enabled them to listen to what was being said in any room by pointing the device at a window associated with the apartment or home or complex, and merely the vibrations passing through and hitting the glass was enough, when amplified, supposedly, by the way, you should go over to the museum in DC, enough for them to be able to hear entire conversations. So nothing even actually in the room. So I wonder, just speculating, is it possible to implant a little device? If you can receive those messages, could you put a little piece of plastic or what have you down in someone's ear canal and then transmit that when it vibrates, your brain, your eardrum picks it up? I don't know. She was able to talk then. And I believe it was on the up and up. So these other folks, though, not so much. Is that possible that a device could exist like that or eventually exist? Maybe so. But yeah, she can't talk anymore. And either can this guy, just barely. Biden is rattled. He's rattled, all right, by his sinking approval ratings. Sinking? It's like the pool is empty. Whatever you do, don't dive. Approval ratings, and is looking to regain voters' confidence that he can provide the sure-handed leadership he promised during the campaign, people close to the president say. Crises have piled up in a way that have at times made the Biden White House look flat-footed. Record inflation. Yeah, there's a few of these things. A few crises out there. And everybody's life is worse, in my opinion. Record high inflation. Record high border crossers. What do we have? Like, did they say that they had encountered, how many people was it? It's some ungodly number. Could it be nearly 250,000 or something like this crossing the border in a month? It was insane. Somebody tell me in the chat. Last month. And those are the ones that were encountered, not counting the ones who got by. Record inflation, high gas prices, and this is by NBC, by the way. High gas price, record gas prices, a rise in COVID case numbers, and now a Texas school massacre. That is one more horrific reminder that he has been unable to get Congress to pass legislation to curb, of course they're using here gun violence rather than the violence committed by a person with a firearm. because Democrats clearly want, in my opinion, to take the right to self-defense away from you. And they've been at it for many decades, in my opinion. Democrat leaders are at a loss about how he can revive his prospects by November, when midterm elections may cost his party control of Congress. Wouldn't that be nice? But of course, we're going to end up with a bunch of Republicans that are not beholden to the people who put them in office. And that's one of the other things that we can talk about here on a Jason Goes Political show. How can we motivate politicians, Republicans, to do what they promise to do and to go further, because we need to go further than what they promise to do. We need radical solutions to radical problems. Quote, I don't know what's required here, said Representative James Clyburn, Democrat, South Carolina, whose endorsement in the 2020 Democratic primaries helped rescue Biden's struggling candidacy. But I do know the poll numbers have been stuck where they are for far too long. The important thing about the poll numbers is that it's the Democrat voters that are growing to despise Biden and the administration. So, of course, there are segments who vote in America who vote Democrat because they get more and more goodies by doing so. But there are a great many individuals in the country who vote Democrat because they believe, still takes your breath away, that they still believe that that is the working man's party. You vote for them and you're giving power to the working man, even though all of the unions are selling you out to newcomers to the United States, and you lose your job. You are diversity fired as a white man or woman, as your replacements show up, as your union embraces all of this, and then of course you also have these non-union companies that are putting union companies out of business because union companies have fought for workers' rights, or the unions themselves have fought for workers' rights, and as a consequence, wages have gone up, safety equipment and standards go up, and vacation goes up. And these new companies come along with people who are coming from the poorest places on planet Earth. And so a slight increase in that, or even no increase in how much they're actually making, but then they get to live in Western civilization, law and order, clean streets, trash, and everything, living off of what we have assembled here and what we are paying for. And so then those companies are able to go out and bid far under what the companies who have union workers have to bid, because they have to pay so much more, and these companies go out of business. So is it still really the working man's party, the Democrat Party? Time to pull your head out of your asses. A West Wing shakeup? Speculation is churning that Biden could shake up the West Wing staff, although that's not about to happen right away. Multiple people close to the White House said they've heard that Chief of Staff Ron Klain will depart at some point after the midterms, and one has heard him discuss leaving. Should Klain go, a potential successor is Anita Dunn. Wow. A White House advisor, and Biden, is that the same Anita that I'm thinking about? A Biden confidant, whom he often turns to when his fortunes look bleak. Well, they're about to get bleaker, my friend. Dunn began working at the White House at the start of the term, then left and returned in early May at Biden's specific request. No woman or person of color, so as long as it's non-white, or as long as it's not white, has ever been the White House Chief of Staff since the position was created after World War II. It's not like we don't get enough of this. It's just always celebrating white erasure. It's every single time. This is the first non-white doing this. This is the first non-white doing that. Okay, it also means it's the last white person. In almost every case, it's just like it trickles at first and then it's a river. Let me jump over. I'll take a quick look at Entropy. Wow, this guy is a champion without equal. Dude, bro, moment. Financially gifting 50 US dollars. He says, for white well being and a little bit of politics. Amen to that, man. Thank you so much. That's great. That is Dude Bro Moment. Let's get some 07s and some Raugus emojis for this champion. I really appreciate it, everybody. Kate says that the border crossers without papers who were encountered in April, the number was 210,000. 210,000. I submit that many of these Democrat voters who are white and working class are hearing about this and knowing with their cousins, knowing about losing their jobs, knowing about their companies going out of business because of these new companies popping up. And this is, by the way, the reason why just some sort of a laissez-faire environment is not a good one. Some sort of a just libertarian, all that matters is money, is not a good one, because this is the kind of thing that happens among many other negative outcomes. But it's likely that they're hearing about all of these newcomers who they know their party will want to give citizenship to, and whom, before they receive citizenship, will be getting paid even less. They know that those people are going to be staffing the companies that will put their company out of business. They know that those people will be taking the jobs in their company, non-white people, who it will be moral in this anti-white system to have them hire them, to promote them, and to replace whitey with them. So I submit that there are plenty of Democrat voters, white Democrat voters, that are getting worried as well about the short-term and long-term outcomes of these policies. I'm going to jump. Thank you so much, Dude Bro Moment. That's fantastic. This story I is insane, and I had to share it with you all. Let's give a thank you to Kate for getting these stories. Ukraine's unicorn LGBTQ soldiers head for war. This is what America, along with open neo-Nazis in the Ukraine, it's what America is financing in Ukraine. And just with all of our billions of dollars stolen right from our pockets, of course, much of it, I believe, in my opinion, is just being laundered away and stolen. Some of it might be getting destroyed if it's actual paper currency. The purpose might be to destroy the currency because they have created so much currency. So there's that. But then there's also this: the anti-white morality being visited on foreign lands. Members of Ukraine's LGBT community who sign up for the war have taken to sewing the image of the mythical beast into their uniforms just below the national flag. Now, why is this a problem? Well, if you take, first of all, we're being forced to finance that. Our money and our reputation as Americans is being besmirched by the pushing of an identity that is seated in one's sexuality, which is outrageous, absolutely outrageous. It is detrimental, in my opinion, for the individual and for society to seat one's identity in what one is attracted to. Moreover, in a military environment, and this, of course, is plaguing the military, police departments, fire departments in the United States as well, is that the integrity of the unit and its efficacy, in my opinion, is achieved by way of harmony. Everybody believes, every man believes, that every other man is essentially just like him, that they are deprived in that environment of females to destabilize by way of competing for the sexual attention of females, and that their loyalty is in toto to the chain of command, not an identity, not something else to throw into the mix, not a competition for a female who is present or something of this nature. In the past, men who were homosexual, as we read history, as I've read history, and of course I'm open to being corrected by CNN or others if I'm wrong, but men who were attracted to men didn't tell people because that was their sexuality. It wasn't who they were. It was what they were attracted to. And so when they were in the military, they were like every other man that was present. Their loyalty was totally for the power structure, and there was nothing in the individual unit to disrupt that loyalty, to disrupt that unity. You couldn't have, in that environment, you couldn't have men competing for the sexual affections of other men because that was not talked about. So you couldn't have the deterioration of the military unit the way you could as soon as they, in my opinion, and I think General Schwarzkopf said the same thing all the way back during the first Gulf War, that it disrupts the unit. You brought women in, men then competed for the sexual attention of the women. They learned to hate the men who was getting the sexual attention. The women began controlling the lives of these men, and this is as a consequence as well of the anti-white narrative, anti-whitism, and some other shortcomings, this gynocentrism in the body of our people. But when men who were attracted to men were in these units and nobody knew, so you couldn't vie for the affections of another man, at least openly, it did not break down the unit. What will happen now that you can openly, and it encouraged, because in the anti-white narrative, what you want to have sex with is all that you are. If you're as far as the anti-whites are concerned, Democrats, leftists, and the like, if you are a man attracted to a man or a woman attracted to women, that's all you are. And you're not allowed to be anything else. And so now in this environment where they have these unicorns, you will have men competing for the affections of other men. And what's going to happen when you have, like we have in breaking down, in my opinion, the United States military? What's going to happen when you have men winning favor of another man sexually, and then the competitors who lost out end up having the dirty jobs? They have to clean the latrine. They have to go out on the most dangerous missions and the like. Well, the units are going to break down, obviously. It'll be the exact same thing that happens between men and women. It'll just happen between men and men. And here in the United States, they glorify this in the media. And one day, if the United States is going to wrest itself from this leftist, anti-white dystopian hell, it's going to have to deal with the media merchants. And there are various ways to do that have not been implemented or tried. As volunteer fighters, Zuhan and Romanov pack for a return to active duty. They contemplate the unicorn insignia. So this is setting themselves apart from the rest of their unit. Imagine how disruptive this is. They contemplate the unicorn insignia that gives their uniform a rare distinction, a symbol of their status as LGBTQ couple who are Ukrainian soldiers. Members of Ukraine's LGBTQ community who sign up for the war have taken to sewing the image of the mythical beast into their standard issue epaulets just below the national flag. The practice harks back to 2014 conflict when Russia invaded, then annexed the Crimean Peninsula from Ukraine, when lots of people said there are no gay people in the army. Actor, director, and drama teacher Zuhan told Reuters as he and Romanov dressed in their apartment for their second 3-month combat rotation. Quote, so they, the lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer community, choose the unicorn because it is like a fantastic, non-existent creature. I don't see how that works. How does that? I just think you were into My Little Pony. I mean, why would that work? Zuhan and Romanov, who identifies as a non-binary person with she/he pronouns and moved to the capital from Crimea after being displaced in 2014, met through their theater work. Neither, really? They were actors and were at the theater? I'm so surprised. Neither was trained in the use of weapons, but after spending a couple of days hiding in their bathroom, oh, come on, this is Protic, at the start of the war, decided that they had to do more. Quote, I just remembered that at a certain point it became obvious that we only had 3 options: either hide in a bomb shelter, run away, and escape, or join the territorial defense volunteers. We chose the third option, Romanov said. Russia says its forces are on a special operation to demilitarize Ukraine and rid it of a radical anti-Russian nationalist. Ukraine and its allies call that a false pretext. It's just a pretext. This is NBC News. For a war of aggression. For Zuhan and Romanov, their vocation gives them an added sense of responsibility, really, as actors. Because what Russia does is they don't just take our territories and kill our people. They want to destroy our culture, and we can't allow this to happen, Zuhan said. Well, and then I'm going to ask this. What if these guys had not, by way of AntiWhitism, been encouraged to make their identities, their sexuality, what they're attracted to? What if they were just, their identity was proud Ukrainian men, and they went off to war to fight for their country that's being invaded by the Russians? Would that be more likely to inspire and to unify the Ukrainian people than these guys are unicorns who are lovers, and they're also going to go out and fight against the Russians? I mean, what do you think? Where would you draw the line? I'm sure, where would this anti-white leftist draw the line? Their first tour of duty around Mykolaiv in southern Ukraine, about 135 kilometers from the port of Odessa, changed their lives. They fought in the same unit and found it terrifying. Zuhan contracted pneumonia, but the couple says their fellow fighters accepted them. You also have the problem when you have lovers, whether it's male and male, you have the same thing, male and female, that they might take risks to save, in a combat situation, their lover that will jeopardize the group. Sometimes in combat, you have to allow members of the unit to perish, and sometimes in horrible ways. And this also is another way that, in my opinion, that these scenarios can disrupt and undermine the efficacy of a fighting force. There was no aggression, no bullying. It was a little unusual for the others, But over time, people started calling me Antonina. Some even used my she pronoun, Romanov said. So can you imagine? They're supposed to be out there fighting and killing, and as a consequence, they will be dying and being maimed, an invader of their country. And they need to concern themselves with how they talk about the homosexual lovers in their midst. That's like an issue people need to be thinking about. And then whether or not you have called the person who is presenting as a male a she, and the name, that the female name that she wants to be called, I can't see how that would undermine the fighting abilities of a unit. I just can't. It doesn't. Of course that would work just fine. I'm a little worried about that, Zuhan said, the mood becoming more somber as the unit headed toward their train as dusk fell. I know that in some units, the rules are more strict. It was like that in our first unit. So probably in the first unit, they said, no, we're not going to be calling you by she or some woman's name, and you're here to fight and die for Ukraine. That's why you're here. You're not here so that the rest of the unit can learn when you're a she or when you're a he, or when you want to be called by the female name and when you can be called by the male name. That's not the purpose of why you're here, right? Zuhan's unease lifts as one commander makes clear his refusal to tolerate. Okay, listen to this. And here we're here. This is what's happening in the United States. When you see this happening in Ukraine, what you're seeing, and why this is a relevant article, is what's happening in the United States. And if given the same scenario, the United States at war with an invader, you would see this exact same behavior. Zuhan's unease lifts as one commander makes clear his refusal to tolerate homophobia. So that's what the commander is concerning himself in the midst of warfare. Nobody can tell a joke or look at you askew because of what you're attracted to. And a more senior officer says the only important thing on the front line is to be a good fighter. He subsequently tells Reuters by phone. So that's the only important thing. That is the only important thing. But one overriding fear voiced back in their apartment remains. Quote, the thing I'm worried about is that in case I get killed this is the end of the article too, during this war, they won't allow Antonina to bury me the way I want to be buried, Zuhan said. They'd rather let my mum bury me with the priest reading silly prayers. Oh, so you demand these onerous constructions from everyone around you relative to what you're attracted to and whether or not you want to be a man or be a woman or present as one. But when it comes to Catholicism, you're allowed to say silly prayers. And I wonder if that's a appropriate translation or a direct translation. I wonder if there's another word that he actually used there instead of silly. And he says, but I'm an atheist and I don't want that. Well, I tell you what, when it comes to atheists, I would not want one in a foxhole with me. Forget about it. Because there is nothing for an atheist after this life. And so allowing you to get killed so that they can just walk off and live and be able to be their sexuality another day as all that's important in their life, that's no problem. You know, there's no judgment, there's no condemnation after this life. There's just, can I get away with it? And even if an atheist out there says, well, I have ethics higher than the average Christian or worshiper of various religions, even if they claim that, I mean, come on, what kind of age is this? You might be a great person, but I don't want you in my foxhole, or any of them. You saw that joke coming. What I want to do, as before I take a look again, is this. I want to share that, let's see. I want to share, I think, each time we get together for these 10 or potentially more episodes of Jason Goes Political, a couple of my political positions. And we'll start off with two that you won't find very surprising. The first is that if I were in office and I had the power to do so, I would immediately implement a moratorium on legal immigration. It would end immediately, not another person coming into the country. And there are reasons for that. I would also address, relative to that, these visas that allow tech workers to come into the United States and forcing companies by various strategies to use American laborers and to train them with their billions and trillions if they have to. So an absolute moratorium on legal immigration. And once I have the data, maybe it wouldn't be lifted if it were in my power to do so ever while I'm alive, until the problems begin to correct themselves. I would also use the military immediately to secure the border in a way so that 0 people are able to get past. 0. And maybe just to make it spectacular, I would drop the airborne all along the border, the one that's being crossed. Leftists and Democrats and all these anti-whites of various names, they love to say, you only care about the southern border because brown people come across that border. You don't care about the northern border. No one, relatively speaking, comes across the northern border. And anywhere that would become a problem, if we secured the southern border with the military, well, then we would just secure the northern one as well. That's simple. I would also penalize the leaders of foreign countries that were allowing movements to get started in their countries of people, bodies of people, to come to the United States. Because part of the reason for doing so, especially when it concerns Mexico, is that remittances are the biggest source of income for Mexico. And okay, check that out to make sure it's accurate. But in other countries as well. So it is theft. That's how I would treat it. As a foreign leader stealing from the United States of America. So as long as that individual was in office, if I had the power to do so and I were in office, I would shut down all support for that country. I would make the people scream to the heavens to have that leader replaced. And I would finance his opposition until we got somebody who was in office in Mexico and El Salvador and Guatemala and all these places that deal with those efforts in their countries in as ruthless a capacity as they are wont to do throughout history. That's how we would handle it if I were in office. I would also pursue prosecution of every financier who has funded efforts to bring foreigners into this country illegally. That's actually treason to the United States, I believe. Please do check it out. And if I'm incorrect, then correct me. But I believe that is treason because you are attempting to change the United States, the outcome being a change of population, the outcome being a change of identity, which is the same sort of change that we resist when the units are carrying flags and wearing uniforms. And we resist it vigorously. All tribes and peoples and countries and kingdoms throughout all of recorded history and beyond have resisted that sort of thing with their most intelligent, with all of their resources. And so I would treat these things as an act of war. So that means that if some anti-white leftist financier, like a guy whose name starts with an S, if I were in office, I would, if having the power to do so, I would charge him as a traitor to the United States. The penalty there, of course, that we would pursue would be execution. And we would also seek to compensate America for the trillions of dollars that have been robbed from the American people by way of all of the programs and set-asides and etc. that these very needy people receive out of our charity and out of theft from us in many other ways. And so I would seek to compensate the American people, maybe potentially lowering their taxes by taking every single dollar that somebody whose name starts with an S and those like him, that they have anywhere, every single one. And you say, well, it might not be legal to do that. The courts might get in your way. I'm talking about a stance in action more aggressive than the left have taken to get to this point, than the anti-white left have taken to get to this point. You're going to have to be a politician, is going to have to be a statesman, and he's going to have to take steps that are more aggressive than those who are victimizing him and destroying his country. That's going to be the only hope of success. You're not going to be able to be, regrettably, with as much promise as there was for Donald Trump. Some things that he was able to get done, the vast majority of things he was not able to get done. Many of those things he wasn't able to get done because he was being betrayed by people in his midst, because the leftists, the Democrats, these anti-whites, they were able to stymie and confuse and get judges who were as leftist as they were to find or to come to faulty conclusions and the rest. You're going to have to be more aggressive. Donald Trump is a businessman, a brilliant one, and has had wild success, a great negotiator. But when you negotiate and when you conduct business, you do so in a framework created by the country, by the people. And at that level where, especially in a corrupt society like the United States has become because of this anti-white leftist ideology, the lines begin to get gray. They begin to fade in that structure. Even there, though, with things becoming a little, well, maybe that's not so illegal, maybe it's more illegal, or maybe more legal. Even there is still a structure. Donald Trump went into a world where there was no structure, where anti-whites just did whatever they want to his policies and programs. They stood in his way everywhere they turned, illegally, in my opinion, and legal scholars will tell you the same, even though I know there are leftist anti-white legal scholars that would tell you, no, that these things were all perfectly fine. At the end of the day, what matters is victory. And so that's why one of my old slogans, I think I want to bring back, kind of use across the spectrum of everything I do, and that is be the struggle. We need to be the struggle, or there's no hope. This can't be a pastime. It can't be something you're going to go into thinking we have these cards that we're allowed to play in society, and then hope by using those cards you can win. No, you go into it saying we have these cards, and I've got a handy pen right here, and I'm ready to make up new cards any moment we need to. That is the attitude you have to have. So implementing the strategies against those who are bringing people across the border in mass numbers, or these groups are being well funded And maybe I'm wrong though. So we would investigate. And if that ended up being the case, that these groups were being financed by American citizens, then the world would get to watch them hang from a rope or whatever means of execution they decide. And we would take everything they have. And then it would be less likely that others would follow. This is a traitor. These folks are traitors to the country. They are enemies, self-identified enemies of the United States. And if you want this country, you're going to have to fight for it. Let me take a look and see if there are any financial gifts, see what if there are any comments or otherwise. And I think then we'll wrap it up. I want you all to remember to give me your input on the thread about start time and logo. Should there be a logo or not? And any other ideas that come to mind or criticisms? What kind of stories we could or should cover? That sort of thing. Anything that comes to mind, put it in the thread so I can have a look and think about it. And then I will also, once we sign out, get to work on this studio again, which was all ready to go until OBS decided to have a seizure or whatever it did. EXO is over here on Entropy. Thank you, brother. Writes, good day, NWG, watching on D Live, supporting from Odyssey. Whatever gets it done. God bless you, man. I appreciate that. That is fantastic. Over there on Odyssey, we have Troggy Trog is with us. Something, I'm sorry, the monitor's going so blurry. It's not my eyes. Something with the name Lisa at the end, I think. So hello to you. Great to see you both over there. See you over there, EXO, on D Live. Let me swivel around to here. There is the great Brant Danger is with us. Hello, brother. Trigger warning is here. Anomalous host. The logo should be Santa Claus, the Nordic version. Ah, that's cool. Victorian Time Traveler says if a short round happens to fall, the sergeant chat happens to be under it, that would just be a shame, a crying shame. That's funny. Bernal says, absolutely, they have to be truly courageous. Yep, without question. There's the great Roy Danton. And let's see, I asked Yiz earlier how she was doing. Bryce is here. I hope she's recovering. RC, the realist, says, hey, we're going to be playing tomorrow. We will be, of course, I'm on with Mark, PWR, but then I might stream again a Roland Going Free and do a review of, I don't know, maybe Sargon or Jordan Peterson. So that ought to be fun. And I will play again RC Realist music if you missed it the other day. Great to see you, brother. Roy says, greetings from the once great state of Virginia. Absolutely. Glad you are in the state, brother. Now, the funny thing is that folks from around the world will be saying, wow, they're like right next beside each other, I bet. No, big state. All right. I don't see if Yiz sent me a response, but I hope she's getting better. Christ says, what is your response to those that observe what God states clearly in Leviticus? Well, I mean, maybe I can answer that on a roll-in. This is really political, this show. That's the idea here. There's popcorn power. Remember to tag me as No White Guilt so that I can easily find you and your message or question that you might have. Anomalous Host is asking, how do you respond to someone who says, what's wrong with race swapping in movies? So in other words, the person race swapping. I'm guessing what you mean is that the story is based, and remember when they say based on a true story, it doesn't have to mean that at all. You do know that. If you don't, you should. That there needs to be no truth whatsoever. It could be like based on a true story because they use the name Oregon. But I'm guessing that what your question is that like there was a police officer that was white in an event that happened and they turned him to the actual character in the movie into a different person, a different race rather. Is that what you're saying? And if so, then of course that's white erasure. That's my response. Pearl Lady says, the other thing Biden did was allow men to invade women's sports and spaces. He signed an executive order week 1 that included that. Well, that's true. And so as you can see, not all was bad that he did. I mean, obviously, I don't want women, I don't want, boy, with the ear against the door, I don't want people who are born without a penis to have to compete against those who were born with a penis, just generally speaking. But in America today, across the West today, too many white women continue to enjoy the benefits of anti-whitism. And so taking away some of those benefits, like being able to compete with those much more like yourself, will cause consternation, aggravation, and they will turn more toward men like myself for answers to how to remedy that. So societally, personally, I don't want it, but societally, it's ultimately a good thing. Promethean Promulgation says, I guess Biden met with K-pop. What is this? Met with K-pop, bans BTS today to talk about anti-Asian hate. I'll have to look into that. Okay, Lane says she will email a copy of her letter after I open the package. All right, sounds good. Oh, here we have. Yiz says, I'm feeling better and I will hopefully be able to stream again next Monday. I'll make a video in the morning for my channel if I am able. Well, that is great news. Fantastic, sister. Glenn is here. Archangel says, everything you do is interesting and informative. I really appreciate that. Well, you could see that with the same wherewithal that I have, I've brought Going Free and all the rest of the work that I'm doing here, I can bring that focus and creativity, ingenuity to the political sphere. And like I said, we can talk about tangible things that we can actually do, or people who vote Republican can actually do to compel those. Largely, most of them are cowards. We want them to do wonderful things for the country, but they're largely cowards, and so they need to be pushed. When I worked on the Hill, if you're listening to this and you're a Republican, staunch Republican voter, conservative, whatever it might be, when I worked on the Hill, I cannot convey to you how demoralizing it was for these people to come in who have made great speeches and lots of wonderful promises. And then they get there behind closed doors. And when you put them on the spot, off the record, and say, when are you going to do X, one of your promises, and Y, another promise, and Z, another promise, they say, I can't do that. You know what they would say about me in the papers? You know what they'd be saying, blaring from every television in the country if I do that? So we need to hold their feet to the fire, metaphorically, in order to get them to do the things that they promise for us. And there are ways to do that. And we can talk about that in the future. But otherwise, I am going to get to work on the studio again so that we can potentially have it ready for the next time we're together on Jason Goes Political. And hope to see you all back